Y'all have to forgive me a little bit this morning. I've been battling a cold since about Tuesday. But maybe with a little H2O and a little help by God, we'll get through this morning. The title of today's sermon, as you'll notice, is What is Your Wattage? And I can remember when the CFL light bulbs first came out. Y'all know the ones I'm talking about now. That we all use those now. The one that's got the little spiral light in it that has this, just a compact fluorescent light is what CFL stands for. And I remember that, when those things first come out, they were pretty expensive, and everybody was really up, and ruffled their feathers a little bit because they said they were doing away with the conventional light bulb. And I believe as far as I know, you can still buy conventional light bulbs. I know, our house has got all these CFLs in them anyways. But I'll never forget the first time we put them in our bathroom, and I walked in the bathroom and I cut them on, and I thought, my goodness, I said, this is as bright as it gets in here. We're going to be in bad shape, because, we don't have any lighting over our shower anyways, and once you close the shower curtain, it's pretty dark in the shower. I thought, well, I guess, it'll do as it does. So anyways, if you give a few minutes to those light bulbs, what happens to them? They get brighter. Yeah, it just kind of like goes through a warming stage. But I cut them on. It was dim. I walked out and I come back in, and I thought, my goodness, these little things really put out some good light. But this morning, what I want to talk to you about is, you go ahead and turn your Bibles over to Matthew chapter 5. What is your wattage? Because if you go this morning, we ride down to Walmart, we're going to buy some light bulbs, and we begin to walk down the light bulb aisle. What are you going to see? You're going to see some 40 watts. You're going to walk down a little more, and you're going to see some 60 watts. And I guess they still make 75 watts. Then you got 100 watts, and then, you get on up in some big lighting. If you get up into the commercial lighting, there's some huge lights. You're getting on up to 500 watt, 750 watt, but the brighter the more watt it is, the brighter that light puts out. In other words, if you go and you change your lights this morning in your house, and you got all 40 watt lights in there, and then you want to change them up, and you go and put you some 500 watt lighting, you're probably going to have to change some wiring on it too. But it's going to really radiate your home. There's going to be light that's just shining out the windows. But this morning, our life is measured pretty much in the same way. Because when you read this scripture right here, let's take a glance at it. Chapter 5, verse 13. First off, he starts off talking about the salt. This is Jesus Christ. He says, "You're the salt of the earth. But if the salt has become tasteless, how will it be made salty again? It is good for nothing anymore, except to be thrown out and trampled under by men." But listen to verse 14. Here it goes. "You are the light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hidden. Nor do men light a lamp and put it under a peck measure or a bushel, but on a lampstand, and it gives light to all who are in the house." See, God has given us a challenge this morning. Without a doubt in my heart, when you ask Jesus Christ to come into your life, you have become a light for His church. You have become a spokesman for His church. And the more that you live light, the more that you live life, understand this, friends, our wattage can gain, our wattage can leave us. The more that we live life, the more the radiance we either put off or we don't put on. And I know that you kind of get a little bit of an idea in your brain this morning exactly what I'm talking about. Is you can sit here and you can think about some people that's been in church all their life who give out a lot of light. Because they live a life, they walk a path that is righteous with God. You can tell that they genuinely have a relationship where God honors them by honoring their life. Everything about them that they do, you can step back and you can say, I know so-and-so, that's a good man, because he loves the Lord. And then there's a lot of people, my friend, that come inside the church and they ask Christ into their life and they live a good life for a while, and then you don't never see them out in the church anymore, and you may see them out in the world, and and somebody say something about Mr. So-and-so, you say, that's an awful man. He's an awful person. And then you get to thinking, it says, well, he used to go to church with me. And then they say, man ain't never been to church. I'm telling you right now. And that's, you can see the variance of the lifestyles. You can see someone over here who may have genuinely given their life to Christ. And maybe who even followed Christ to a certain extent, but something in their life has given out on them, and they completely forgot who Christ was. And if you could kind of measure it as looking at a lampstand, because Christ uses this word lamp, and when we think about lamps, we look at the chandeliers we have, and we think about the little twist lamps that we have at home, but if you go back to the true Hebrew days, they had like a molded clay pot, and inside this pot they would pour their fuel, and this was the type that was in a house, not a covered, but they would pour this fuel in this bowl, and then they had an apparatus where a wick would go up inside this, and it had a bigger base on it, and they would set it down in that floating bowl of oil. And then he would take that wick and he would light it, and as the light would begin to dim, and that wick would just keep absorbing oil out of that bowl, and if you burn it long enough, it would burn all the oil out. But this is the picture of the lamp this morning, and this is significant because we're going to get there in a minute. But this is the lamp that Christ was speaking of. He wasn't talking about our modern lamps that we have this morning that you plug in. So, but you can see how someone who gets off on the right track could truly have a light that burned for Christ. But as they become, more aware of the surroundings around them, or maybe the more they become battered, or more that something has buckled down in their life, maybe they didn't get any oil. Maybe they didn't trim the wick. So what begins to happen to that light? It becomes poor. It doesn't take a whole lot to blow out a very weak flame. Yesterday we were out here lighting those fish fryers. Me and Junior was kind of worried how I was going to get them lit without, burning myself or blowing up. But, we'd light that match, just a little bitty match. And you'd throw it into that gas that's coming out. Clem knows all about gas. It'll light right up. It doesn't sit there and sputter and, think about burning and maybe, get bright, get low. Oh, when that gas is coming out, if it's got the right mixture, boy, you got a pretty blue flame. But see, some people's like that match. And others is like that huge furnace that's burning. And they have trimmed their life, and they have equipped their life. And they have lived a lifestyle where God has blessed them with filling that bowl up, with making sure that vessel doesn't have any cracks in it, by making sure that wick is always trimmed and is floating right in that bowl. See, that's the life that God honors. God blesses those who live that lifestyle. But understand that, not all of us is walking in that path. This morning when we get to looking a little bit more in the vessel purpose and the things of that light, there's a lot of people that's walking around that may have a beautiful wick, may have all the oil that they can imagine, but their vessel's cracked. And I don't know about you, but if you punch a hole in a gas tank, you're going to run out eventually. Whether it's a big hole, whether it's a small hole, whether it's just a small crack. That gas is eventually going to run out. That fuel is eventually going to leave whatever you got it in. And then there's a lot of people with a nice bowl with plenty of oil, but a wick that's just so long that it can't light anymore. Just have just one amber basically just kind of smoldering on it. And there's a lot of people in our world, there's a lot of people in our churches this morning that has a bowl, has a beautiful wick. That wick is sitting on the bottom of that bowl. We're going to look this morning with God's help how we can never find ourselves, or how we can learn and can see the surroundings of the danger of letting our light burn out. Because understand this, you take a huge stadium, one of the greatest things that you can imagine, or you kind of see, if you've ever been to a Braves game. We went this past year to a game. We were sitting there, and after the end of the game, the Braves had won, and they cut all the lights off. And all of a sudden, the camera started flashing. It wasn't before the game was over. I take that back. It was in the ninth inning, because that's when Kimbrel, the saver, comes out. Boy, they had these huge banners that come up on the electronic screen that got like a flame burning in it. But I really thought it was a power outage. We're sitting there, and the lights go off. I thought, oh, goodness. What's going on now? But about the time the lights went off, everybody started flashing their cameras. And it was amazing. I mean, you're just sitting there, and it kind of like, the radiance of that light coming from each one of those flashes, you could just see the whole field. And as the signage began to come on where it said, Kimbrel, and it, encouraged, and the fans got to standing up and got on their feet, and they started bringing the lights back up. And as I sat there a little bit, I didn't really think about it then, but I guess I thought about it more when I was preparing for this sermon. But, I can't ever recall seeing one flash that whole game. All the lights were on. I can't recall seeing one flash. But when all those lights went off, when we were in total darkness, the one of those flashes I could identify with. But when everyone began to take a picture, it began to glow just like the lights were on. You see, that's what God's purpose is in our life. See, he says this, he says, if you take a group of people, if you take a church of people, and you trim the wicks, and you fill their bowls, and you make sure that the bowls are of good sound. He says, listen, maybe one person doesn't make a huge impact. But what happens when one 60-watt bulb is tied in with 1,000 60-watt bulbs? Got 60,000 watts. That's what God's telling us. He says, maybe as an individual, you may not stand out much. But when we all shine together, that's why it's so important to understand this morning that when one person has fallen, when one person needs our help, when you may be the person that needs your help, it's time to get back to God. Because there's more than just you that's relying on that. The church is relying on that. The world that's sitting in darkness that can see the reflection of those lights, they are relying on that. Without a doubt, everyone in that stadium did not have a camera going off that night. I didn't have a camera. I wasn't taking a picture. Well, I guess I was with an iPhone, but not at that moment. But could you just imagine if every person in there pulled a camera? I mean, I'm sure if you were in a jet flying over the stadium, you could see those lights flashing. That's the light. That's the light. That's the radiance that God is telling us we have the authority. We have the power to give off if we just allow Him. The first thing this morning, and I've got to hurry. The first thing this morning that we see in What's Your Wattage is the figure of the lamp. The figure of the lamp. There's four side keys that goes into this. Verse 14, he says, "You are the light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hidden." If you're just taking notes this morning, write down 1 Corinthians 6, 19. We'll flip right here, and this is going to be over my head. The first figure we look at in the figure of the light is the lamp itself. 1 Corinthians 6, 19, it says, "Or do you not know that your body is the temple of the Holy Spirit, who is in you, whom you have from God, and that you are not your own?" See, understand this. This morning, when you look at the lamp, it's actually reflecting back as the clay vessel. Listen, the life that we have, guess who's given us that life? You may say, well, my mom and my daddy give me this life. My granny and my grandpa give me this life. Somebody else may have given you this life, but you're absolutely wrong this morning. You're breathing, you're sitting in this church this morning because God has given you the authority to do so. I want you to understand this morning, if you could have woke up this morning and says, I'm not getting out of this bed, but if God would have made you get out of that bed, guess what you would have done? You'd have got out of that bed. If you go home tonight and you lay your head down and you say, I'm going to wake up in the morning, I'm not dying tonight, and God says, you're dying tonight, guess what's going to happen? I had an old friend, you say you'll wake up dead or worse. Listen, God has given you that lamp itself, that vessel itself, who you are, the existence of you, is given by God. It's given by God. Do you not know your body is the temple of the Spirit? Because you have asked Christ into your life. We are that lamp. We are that lamp. You see, there's so many people that doesn't understand that, I don't need to give off a whole lot of light. I just need to burn just a little bit to know that the Spirit is still inside of me. But God says, you are the temple. You are the body. You are the bowl. You are the bowl this morning. What's it mean to be the temple? Understand here, look at Romans 8:9. When you look at it from the fashion of the lamp, not only the lamp this morning, but the oil. It says, however, you are not in flesh, but in spirit. If indeed the Spirit of God dwells in you, but if anyone does not have the Spirit of Christ, he does not belong to Him. See, listen, we are the temple. But what are we the temple of? My friends, if we're the bowl, God wants to place the oil in us, the Spirit has to be the oil. The Spirit has to be the oil. See, God has created the temple, the body, the bowl of who we are is sitting here. And as we have asked Christ into our life, God automatically gives us the oil. But if you come on Wednesday nights, we talked about how Paul says that our hearts can be seared to sin. That we can live and walk so much in sin that we don't agree or maybe even function with the Spirit anymore. Because we've walked so close to the fire, we can be burned, it doesn't bother us. It doesn't bother us because we got so many calluses on our hands. Because we've turned our heart toward the Spirit so many times. You see, we're still the temple, but guess what begins to happen to the Spirit of it? When we can't adhere to the Spirit, when we can't hear the Spirit at all begin to speak with us, do we lose the Spirit? No, we don't lose the Spirit. We lose the ability to use the Spirit. See, we're still the temple. We're still the temple of the Spirit. The Spirit never leaves us. It's kind of like this. I ran out of gas in the lawnmower one time. Had my gas locked in the building, but I couldn't find my key to the building. Y'all done that before, hadn't you? See, I had a lawnmower that wouldn't run, but I had gas, but I couldn't utilize it. Got to get back and reconcile. You've got to understand that, listen, we are the temple. God has given us the oil. He's given us all the power in the world to burn this oil. When we begin to walk, we begin to backtrack so much that we don't see, we don't hear, we can't walk with the Spirit any longer. That's what God is telling us. He says, listen, if you want to have a bright light, you've got to use everything I'm giving you. You can't serve two masters. You can't serve the master of darkness and serve the master of light. You can't shine bright in the daylight and shine dim at night. It doesn't work that way. He's telling us if you want it, you've got to use it. The second thing this morning is over in Proverbs. Proverbs 20. Proverbs 20:27. We're looking at the wick here. So we've looked at the lamp, we looked at the bowl itself, we looked at the oil that has been provided by the Spirit in the bowl. Now look at Proverbs 20:27. It says, the spirit of a man is the lamp of the Lord. The spirit of man is the lamp of the Lord, searching all the innermost parts of his being. Listen, God has given us the human spirit about us. The wick that burns within us is our human spirit. See, listen, without life, we can't have life. God has given us the body. He's given us that actual temple of who we are, what we see here. And then the Spirit has given us the oil inside that body to have the fuel capability of burning something. And now He says, now the human spirit that you are, The human soul that you are is providing that wick. See, God is, we don't really walk around on fire. That would be kind of crazy, wouldn't it? That would be scary for a lot of people. I'll be honest with you, if I seen a man burst in flames, I'm running. If I don't have any way to extinguish them anyway. I mean, we're literally not going to catch fire. What he's saying, he says, that spirit about you. See, God's given our spirit to us. He's given us a spirit to live. He's given us a spirit to work. He's given us a spirit to do all sorts of things. There again, Paul says that not only with that spirit that he gives us, but he gives us a liberty of spirit. See, that's one of the mysteries of God, I guess you can say. Because when you ask Christ to come into your life, God doesn't hook you up to a ball and chain and say, now you're restricted. He gives us that liberty to choose. He says, choose wisely. Choose wisely. Choose in a manner that is righteous unto me. See, so often in life, we'll have that bowl, we'll have a temple, we'll have the Spirit, but our lifestyle that we live, that human spirit that's about us, don't find God nowhere in it. See, many people try to fool everybody around them. They say, well, I go to church on Sunday morning. I may go Sunday evening. If I get my kids there Wednesday, that really puts a plus on me. You live like you want to on Monday and Tuesday and even Wednesday at work and Thursday and Friday. Then you go hang out wherever you want to on Saturday and you say, well, I'll come back to God's house today. See, without the wick, it's impossible to burn anything out. We can have the temple. You can fool everybody around. Listen, I've been fooled by some of the best. I'm telling you right now, genuine people. There's genuine people there. Something come up in their lifestyle. You say, whoa, wait just a minute. Something just don't add up here. Where's God in that? See, that wick, that feature of something that actually holds the flame. And let's look at the flame. The last part of the figure of the lamp is the flame. John 1, verse 4. John 1, verse 4, it says, in him was life, and the life was the light of man. The flame that we have that's provided by us. See, understand this. We can have a bowl, we can have fuel, we can have a wick. But without a flame, we still don't give off any light. Now, I've seen some beautiful lamps, I've seen some. Me and Sarah was talking this morning when we pulled in. I said, did your grandma or mom ever have a touch lamp? Y'all, I bet some of y'all still got one of them hanging up somewhere. Him kind, you just go over and touch it, and it comes on. You touch it again, and it goes a little bit brighter. You touch it one more time, and it's really bright. See, I've seen a lot of beautiful lamps. You ever watched a Christmas story? There's even a lamp of a woman's leg. Y'all remember that lamp, don't you? The fragile leg, the Italian leg, as he said. See, there's all sorts of figures. But what is the purpose of a lamp if it gives no light? It's a piece of decoration item. So if you think about being in darkness, I don't care what the lamp looks like as long as it gives off light. You bring the most beautiful lamp that you can find and bring it to me and you say, go out and use it. I don't care what it looks like. When I'm in the woods at night and it's dark, I want a flashlight that works. I don't care if it's a little old mag light, and I don't care if it's one of them million candle spotlights. Just shine some light so I can get home. But the flame, this flame that we're dealing with here, in him was life, and the life was the light of men. Jesus Christ brought forth this light. If it wasn't for Christ, we wouldn't have any radiance about it. Well, some of us would be fun to hang out with, there's just always one in the crowd that, well, that's a good, cool guy. But there would be no radiance. There would be no light that shines from that light. It would be like that decorative lamp that's hanging on the wall somewhere at your house. It may be like that lamp. My granny had lamps in her house that wasn't even plugged up. I couldn't understand that. Now, what good is a lamp if it's not plugged in? A lamp with no bulbs in it. You know, it doesn't matter what the style is. It doesn't matter, anything about it. But if it doesn't have the connection of the flame, if Christ is not involved there, it will not give any light. It will just be a piece that people can admire. It can be a piece that people question. No bulbs, not plugged in. How do you really cut this thing on? You touch it. Oh, okay. Always a question piece. The figure of the lamp itself, the oil, the wick, the flame. Understand they're all important. But without the flame, none of the others would be possible. Without Christ, the temple would not be possible. You wouldn't even have the bowl. Without Christ, the Spirit, that fuel that fires that lamp, would not be possible. If you don't know Christ this morning, the lamp is just a figurative of speech. It's just something that you can stand there and look at. Just wish you had some type of light. There's two more things this morning we'll look at. I'm going to have to move very fast. Y'all just bear with me. The function of the light. The first, the figure of the light. The second, the function of the light. When you look at the function of the light, it shines in three ways. We must shine privately, publicly, and purposefully. When you look at this, what he's talking about here in verse 15, he says, nor do men light or set a lamp and put it under a peck measure or a bushel, but on a lampstand. He gives light into the whole house, or who all are in the house. You think about the purpose of a lamp. Listen, when you think about your private life or your public life, there's a light that has been burned inside of you to be shined for somebody. For your private self, listen, like I said, if you're in the dark somewhere, if you're walking to a deer stand in the middle of the night or your car breaks down on an old dark dirt road somewhere, listen, you want some light to be able to find your way to somewhere where you can, get some bigger light or get some help from somebody. That's the public side of us. See, there's a lot of things that's about us that everyone else doesn't know. But I want you to understand this. In the public side or the private side of our life, something that most people may not know about you, that light sometimes gives directions when you come to a hard spot in that. When you have difficulties trying to imagine how can I go to someone and explain this to them when it's something private to me? But that light, that spirit that God provides, that physical part of Him, that flame that He provides, the temple that He provides through the bowl, listen, He can guide you by that light that you are, by that example that you are, through even the private sector of your life. You think about the public sector of your life. That's pretty easy there. It talks about there, you're not to light that lamp and put it under the bed or put it under the bushel. That would kind of be foolish. But when you light a lamp, you set it up for it gives out light for the whole house. We're not talking about houses like we have today with these modern houses where you have 6 or 7 bedrooms. When you go back and you look at the Middle Eastern homes, it was usually one giant room. So, if I lit a light up in the center of the room, guess where it's going to shine light to? All 4 corners. If I go over to one corner of it, that's where my bed is, and I light a lamp up, and I pull a cover over my head, and Braden does this sometimes. He'll go in his room and he'll take his little DS and he'll pull a cover over the bed so me and Sarah won't see the light coming from his room when he's supposed to be asleep. But see, same factor here. One big room, you light a lamp, but if you put it under something, you hold that light to yourself. Hold that light to yourself, or maybe you just closing the light off for everyone else. What Christ is saying here, he says, listen, he says, you light a light, don't put it under nothing. He says, if you fire that lamp up, he says, don't hide it under the bushel. Don't put the basket on top of it. Set it on the tallest piece of equipment in your house. Set it up on the table where the whole room has some radiance about it. Put it up on top of the refrigerator. Put it up somewhere so somebody can see the light also. This is what he's talking about here. We must shine our light not only on the private, not only on our public so everyone can see, but also with a purpose. Also with a purpose. Listen, I get home in the evening times. I got blinds open in the living room. I won't cut the living room light up because it don't do no good. You know, it's already lit up in there. It's kind of foolish to go in the middle of daylight and, you know, cut all your lights on in your house. Walk in the living room and lights on, look at the lamp, lights on, and go in the kitchen, lights on. But if you cut all these lights off, it's just the same amount of light in there because you got the blinds open. See what Christ is saying? He says, listen, when you light this, when you set this up for everyone to see, light it with a purpose. When God calls us to be a lamp, when God calls us to be that light, He calls us with a purpose. See, we're all to shine a light so we can bring what? Light into darkness. Light into darkness. See, sometimes the only time we light our lamps is when we're inside church. Being honest with you. The only time that we let our light shine is when we're inside these four walls here. Or maybe when we're down here cooking fish on a Saturday evening. But see what Christ is saying? He says, don't shine it for a portion to see. He says, because when you light that lamp and you set it up in that bedroom, He says, you've set it up so all people can see it. I want you to understand this. I really believe this with all my heart. When Christ was talking about for all people to see, it's because the only time you can see light is when you're standing in darkness. When the light is overpowering whatever the surrounding is. Christ is saying this. He's saying, if you come to church and light your lamp, go to work and light. Listen, don't come to church and just talk about the amazing grace. Don't come to church and sing songs of His wondrous love. Don't come to church and just reflect on the cross. We talked about this morning about the Sabbath. Just don't honor that on one day. Though I believe there's always somebody that needs something as far as inside the church. He says, reflect that light to the people who really need it. Reflect that light to the darkness. Reflect it with purpose. I'm going to close here this morning. I found this illustration here. It says a child was taken to a big cathedral. A big Catholic cathedral. Said she was sitting there on the pew and said they had these magnificent stained glass windows that just wrapped the whole church. Me and Sarah seen some of these in New York. We went to several of the big cathedrals there. Just massive, massive windows. That this child was sitting there and that she was just amazed by the view that she was seeing coming through when the sun was shining through. So she stopped and she asked her mother, she said, Mom, who is those people on those windows? She said, oh, that's just the saints that's come before us. And as she was standing there looking, she says, I get it now. She said, it's the saints that allows the light to shine to all people. You can imagine this, but we don't have stained glass lamps or lights or windows, but we have light that's coming through. See, God's called us to be the saints that go out into this world and allow the light to shine through us. I want to be honest with you. If you think about something for a moment, if they would have been everyone that you've come in contact with would have closed their lamp off, how many of us would truly come to know Christ? Very few of us. Very few of us. God has called us to be a lamp, to be a light, to be that vessel. See, the calling is not what's the hardest part about it. The hardest part is to understand that not only to have that light, but to allow the Spirit to fuel us. So when life is hard to live, to still maintain that human spirit about us, to be that wick that'll burn for Christ. Because without the flame, none of it would be possible. Without Jesus Christ, none would be possible. I want to ask you this morning, look at your own vessel. Look at your own temple today. One of the biggest factors, I remember reading a story about this years and years ago. I was in high school, actually. I was amazed by warships. That one of the hardest things to visualize another ship in the middle of the sea was, before they had all types of radar and things, was there was no visual light. Because what would happen was in storms, the sea would wash back and forth, and as the wind would pick up and blow, it would blow that salt with it, and it would hit those hurricane lights which those ships had on those as parts of their navigation device. And during the middle of a storm, it would be foolish to get out there and clean those glass coverings back off again. What would happen, they would get in a storm and all the windows or the glass around those lamps would become dirty from all the mist in the sea breeze. But as soon as, they said, the most important thing was, as soon as the sea would calm back out, was to get out there and to wash those lamps, to wash those vessels off again. So everyone could see them coming, so they wouldn't have any kind of catastrophic event happen. See, sometimes in life, we're the same way, though. We live a life that's holy. We've lived lives that have been easy to live, but there's just so much grime of life to cover our lives up. I'm giving you the opportunity this morning. Listen, we're inside of a peaceful area. The sea has come to a rest. Today would be a good time to take and to clean those vessels. Y'all can come on up. Today would be a good time to clean the glass on your lamp. I want to give you an opportunity today. Everyone stand with me. I want you to reflect your lamp. You say, Pastor, I know I have oil in my bowl. Pastor, I know my vessel is what God's called me to be. I even believe, Lord, Pastor, that the Lord has trimmed my wig. He gives me an ability each and every day to live for Him. But there's just, for some reason, I'm failing to give off light. Maybe today is the day where you need to come and wipe the filth off of those lights. And ask God to allow His Spirit to guide you. Keep that light burning. More than ever today, church, I really believe this. As we walk down the last days that we know, I believe it. I believe that we're walking down the last days that we'll ever know. And more importantly than ever, I believe we all need to have a bright light. There's so much darkness around us. So much darkness that needs to have light shone in it. Do you know them this morning? If not, come. What page we on, Lindsay? Page 366.